Hello everybody and welcome to this Prezi Camtasia presentation of my student case study for the Teach Now program. And in this video we're going to be focusing on a student who's at the school that I'm currently doing my placement in Zhuhai city in South China, near to Hong Kong and Macau. His name, for obvious reasons, has been removed from this presentation, so we're going to call him John Wong. Excuse the pun. So let's get started, shall we? We're going to, as you can see here in the picture, start with John's profile, look at his home life, have a look into his school history and the interventions that have so far been done, and then finish with some next steps, what to do next from the bottom depths of the sea. So let's look at John's profile. As I said, his name for this purposes is John Wong. He's 8 years of age. He's actually 9. He's coming up to 9 in July of this year. And he's from, he's from China. His parents are from the mainland, but his nationality, the passport that he holds, is from Hong Kong, which is different from the mainland passport. But it's quite normal for a lot of the Chinese mainlanders to go to Hong Kong to get the Hong Kong passport. It has many more benefits for that person to go in and out more freely around the world. So that's what John has. Native language is therefore Mandarin. Widely spoken in Hong Kong is Cantonese, but as he is from the mainland, he will converse in Mandarin with his parents at home. The school, as I said, is QSI Zhuhai, an American-based international school. They've got a lot of schools around the world. This one is in Zhuhai, near to Hong Kong and Macau on the mainland. Nice city, about 2 million people, growing fast, but one of the best environments, certainly for pollution, next to the sea, to live in China. He has attended this international school. He's actually been in QSI now for, this is his 4th year. So he's been here for quite a while. The class he's currently in is a grade 2 homeroom. He actually should be in grade 3, but he has been held back 1 year due to things that we're going to discuss. In this class, in his grade 2 homeroom, there are 16 students in total, 9 girls and 7 boys, including himself. And his teacher, the American lady, Mrs. Cara Willett, actually for this year, the wife of Mr. Dowd. They take different surnames. Who is my mentor for my current clinical placement. There's also a counsellor involved, a part-time counsellor, Mrs. Becky Geis-Pogue, who is the wife of the director, Cliff Geis-Pogue, of the school. As it's quite a small school, about 160 odd students, they don't actually have a full-time counsellor, which some of the larger QSI schools do. But Mrs. Geis-Pogue does come in, as we will talk about later, to help with some students. There's also a parapro. A lot of classes in the school have a parapro, a teaching assistant for the main teacher, local-based, Chinese-based, and the parapro for John's class is Miss Vanessa. So moving on from John's profile, let's take a little look into his home life that, of course, can shine some light on what's currently happening. So in his home, which is in a good neighborhood of Zhuhai, low crime, high to mid-earning families, Chinese families, if you were to go down and look in my basement now, you would see a lot of very, very expensive cars. Some of which have a 100% taxation rule to get in. So there's a lot of money going around. That's certainly nothing short with respects to that in this neighborhood. John has a brother who's apparently 3 years old. He's actually a former QSI student. He was a student of my wife who teaches currently pre-K at QSI, and for several reasons his brother actually was pulled out of the school, I think at the beginning of this year, due to just not being, or QSI have a policy not to accept babies or young ones who haven't been properly nappy trained as such. which of course comes with a lot of other things that maybe aren't being taught in the home. So I think there was also some behavioural issues there, but it was more so the routine hadn't been established, and QSI just deemed it too difficult or disruptive for the class. He possibly has a baby sister. The reason I say that is I think the mum's been in a few times with a young baby, but I think it was quite a surprise to the teachers who met her. It hasn't been fully established if it is her daughter or where the daughter's come from. So that's why the exclamation marks there. Again, you could only imagine that there seems to be a breakdown in communication somewhere there for me to write this. Parents are wealthy, as I've said, but they speak no English, which obviously is a challenge when going to a predominantly English-speaking international school. And as I say, interaction with the parents is therefore not that great. The mother's apparently very young. Read into that as you like. And the father rarely, if ever, attends any school functions or meetings. In fact, maybe none, I've been told. So communication then between the teachers happens through translation via Miss Vanessa, who I alluded to earlier is the Power Pro, but it doesn't happen very often by the sounds of the situation. There is, unfortunately, a mystery surprise as well, I have to tell you, and the mystery surprise is this. His parents want John to be a professional golf star. Yes, I'll say it again, a professional golf star. He's been channeled into doing this over the past few years. It does seem apparently like an obsession, I think more for the parents than actually John, who does enjoy it, but then you would, I guess, have to. If you play, as this says, 4 hours of golf a day at 8 years of age, he participates apparently in many tournaments, and unfortunately because of this, he misses a lot of school. And this is really quite tragic. He always leaves school at 2:15 in the afternoon every day to go and play his 4 hours of golf. And if you calculate that, he therefore misses 1 3/4 hours daily of teaching instruction. And that's actually when he does attend, as we'll go into in more detail in a minute. He's a dull boy, so golf is good for him, is something that has been quoted by his mother. Dull boy meaning a little slow, shall we say. That's the meaning behind that. And here I had a quick swallow and shrink of the heart when I heard this. He kicks me because he loves me. This is actually something that John has come out with in one of his one-on-one classes in respect to his golf coach. He kicks me because he loves me. And it has been reiterated that the mum also agrees to this kind of behavior. I mean, we would call it physical abuse from the world that we come from. But anyway, that, if you live in China, a lot of strict parents do use a lot of force, shall we say, to discipline their children. So I think that's a reflection of that. So on from John's home life, and let's go now into his school history, shall we? So, as I touched on earlier, his attendance record, it's unfortunately extremely poor, which isn't going to help anybody, especially John. He missed the first month and a half this term because of golf and travel. He had some tournaments he had to go to, and I think his parents, worldwide travelers, too, and take him with them when they go. When they feel, they feel like jetting off to somewhere new. His teacher says he has, on average, a less than 50% attendance record, which is just, I think if we were to look at the root causes here, that would be a massive factor. He's been out of school more than he's been in, says Mrs. Willett. If we look here, this is a part of his attendance record. Let's have a look here in this current quintile. So he came to school 21 days. He was absent for 15, tardy for 2. But if you take into respect that he misses an hour and 3/4 of school each day, you can see how Mrs. Willett, his homeroom teacher, is probably very correct that he attends less than 50% of the time. This is a picture of their classroom. Nice classroom that we're going to more later. So let's have a talk then actually about, John's behaviour, shall we? So behaviour-wise, John has a very limited attention span. He seems to have no filter around what's appropriate. He can't sit by himself or for very long at all. Neither can he work independently. He needs a teacher to always sit next to him to kind of keep him focused or semi-focused. And for that, he can't stay in a group for more than a minute. Constantly disruptive. He tends to shout out words and continues to repeat them. I guess you would call that a blurbing, for what I learned in our last cohort meeting. As I said, he has no filter around what's appropriate. I think I've put that in again just to, to make it known that that's definitely the case. And he has trouble controlling his mouth movements too, which is unfortunate. So he drools and spits a lot, which of course the other students don't take very well to. He doesn't know how to behave in front of his peers clearly. In a lot of the time he gets too close to them physically, and the students don't like that. And I suppose overall he therefore has trouble connecting and integrating with other students. I actually had the chance to meet him. I sat on one of his counselling classes the other morning. Lovely boy. He was actually in a music class that I subbed as well a few weeks ago. We did dancing, and he was really good at that, the physical stuff. He really enjoyed that. Seemed to have a good time. But I did notice in the session yesterday I was with him, he does seem to have an oral motor dysfunction, a slant on the left side of his mouth when he says words, especially using the D sound. It does droop to the left, and I think this therefore has an unfortunate effect of not being able to keep the saliva or his drool in. So that's why it does come out a lot, and unfortunately it does spit over everyone. It does seem that he has no real control over that, which of course is very unfortunate. He also seems to have oral perseverations, the continual repeat of a certain subject or trait of thought. And in the class, the session I was in with him, he did mention a lot of times about roller coasters and water roller coasters, just completely off subject. We then go back into doing a task and an exercise, and then again it would just come out again talking about roller coasters. Very, very interesting. Another thing I wanted to mention is that I was in a room the other day, and I looked outside the window and I saw him playing in the basketball yard. A lot of kids playing football, and he was just there on his own at the end with a ball, trying to shoot it into the basketball net. And the ball came over from the group, and he ran to get it for them. And as he went to get it, the other students came over and whizzed past him getting the ball. There was no communication or anything, but you can tell from the body language that he's just not integrating or being invited into any form of integration. Assessment-wise, let's take a look at some of the exams, test results. Unfortunately, John is far below grade level in both Chinese and English. His recent MAP scores confirm this. Reading, he has a grade 1 level, but comprehension is far below that. His writing is below grade 2 level, but has some knowledge of spelling patterns and sight words. Very good at copying, as you'll see shortly. Speaking and listening, displays difficulty with listening in groups. Speaks very loudly, uses one-word questioning, and continually repeats words excessively out loud when he grasps their understanding. John does seem unable to come up with his own ideas or show higher orders of thinking as well. He's unable to analyse or show abstract thought. Let's go and let me show you some of his recent school report that came out in January 2018. As you can see here, so this QSI is a standards-based grading system. They use, mastery of subjects. And if we look, well, let's start at the top here. We have the success orientations, the things that students 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 are meant to grasp and show mastery. And as you can see there here in the second quintile, he has seemingly not met them, quite a few of them. At present, denoted by the N, so he's not yet seemed to be able to show mastery or success of these: responsibility, kindness, group interaction, independent endeavour, those qualities. If we look at his subjects, again here you see a lot that are evaluated as P, so he's still in progress from actually completing them. and only a few Bs. What we're looking for here is As, of course, that he's shown complete mastery, higher order of thinking of these subjects that he's studying. And as you can see, there's a few E's. Well, actually, only a couple of E's there that she's shown a level of mastery that's consistent with his only capabilities. So that does show something there too. Let's have a look at his MAP scores. As you can see here, MAP, as I'm sure you know, measurement of academic progress. Here, F15 is when he was first taken into the school, 4 years ago, and the top here would be his most recent score. Here we have the student score range. They range from bottom to top, and here in the middle, highlighted in black, is John's scores. Here, the district average, this would be the average norm for all QSI schools around the world, and the norm group here would be based on the US statistics for these particular tests. Here, the student percentile range. This is, if you were to take 100 students and put them all line up against the wall, then 18 would mean that 82 students have scored higher than John in this particular test. So, if we go from the bottom on all of these free exams of mathematics, the reading and language usage, you can actually see that he has improved year on year, which is obviously a positive to take. But again, let's look at the recent score, 165. He's below both of the norm group average and the district average there. And the student percentile range, again, is quite low. As it says here, his earlier scores are normal for ELLs, for ones that come in not knowing too much of the English language. But on average, especially language usage, you can see his scores here. Much more growth should be seen in his most recent results. And generally more, on average, more than an 80% percentile range on average compared to his generally below 20% percentile range is seen in other ELLs who are attending the school. Here as well, you can see that his performances are concluded as being low, average, low. So this tells another part of the story, I think. Let's have a look at some of his work examples from his class from left to right. Here, John's work versus an ELL, a little below standard levels work that you can see here, followed by a native English speaker's work. You can clearly see there is a step up in levels here, and John, lack of colour, you can see the picture tells a story, and you can clearly see the difference in the ability to write clearly and online with the rounded letters. There is a clear difference of standard there. Here is an example of John's excellent copying skills, though, focusing on some positives here. So this was written out for him, I think, by Miss Geispoge, and John did copy it very well here, as you can see, quite clear. But again, that is from copying, which he does seem to show some skills in. Moving on then, we've looked at his profile, his home life and school history. Let's go into some interventions that have happened during his time in QSI to try and improve his situation. Looking at his current daily timetable below here, if of course he does attend, at 8:30 to 9:15 in the morning, shown by this arrow, he goes for counselling sessions with Mrs. Geispoge. And again, I will iterate that is if he is here. A lot of the time she doesn't come into school because she's been informed that again he will not be attending due to, well, mostly the fact that he has to go somewhere with his parents abroad or attend a golf tournament. He comes back after this 3/4 of an hour with a counselling session to join the class again, to return to normal class, where he tries to participate in the different activities that the teacher says are as follows: a listening centre, read to self, read to someone, and word work and writing. He then goes for lunch, and at 4:15 here, as you can see, the second arrow denotes this. After Chinese language, he leaves every day when he attends to play golf with his golf coach. slash homework tutor. The golf coach helps on his homework too, which is another interesting component to this story. So he misses 1 hour and 45 minutes, as I said, of school each day. As you can see here, all below, he will miss, including PE here, which of course I'm sure you would agree is a great chance to interact physically, which he seems to be positively quite good at, and also to make friendships on a different level. Challenges then, as if I probably haven't already described them enough. Cultural elements to this. There are social issues. No routine clearly seems to be really the case at home, which doesn't help someone of his age. Finding him actual care in China is also difficult. You know, we're lucky enough at the moment to have the support of Mrs. Geist-Page to come in on a part-time basis. A local school, I think, indeed would surely not accept him for his behaviour, and I think that's probably why he is attending an international school that's more open to taking students like this. And as I said, he has his golf tutor who helps him with his homework, and as you can imagine, that doesn't seem to work that well. He's a golf tutor, not an academic one. This is some more information then on Mrs. Willett, some interventions she's tried to do. She's given John 2 spots in the classroom. One is a table with a group of students who are less intense and actually willing to have him around most of the time. You know, they don't seem to push him away or want to not be with him. So this is where he tries to go, who's tried to be placed most of the time. And number 2, he does have his own table in the classroom for when he can't behave and needs to work one-on-one with a teacher. Miss Vanessa, his Parapro, his Chinese Parapro, uses building words and word sorts, as you can see, some examples here to teach and assist him one-on-one. This unfortunately does hinder the rest of the class, though, Mrs. Willett has told me, because and generally in a lot of cases the Parapros are used to help out more than one student while they do different activities within the class. So Mrs. Willett would do one thing with one group and Miss Vanessa would do another with another group. But of course, because she's having to pay a lot of the time, give one-on-ones to John, this unfortunately can't happen. John seems to show an inability to use abstract thought. This is a big take-home point here. Example, he can add numbers, very proficient in addition, but can't explain why those numbers equal that when they're added together. There seems to be no higher order reasoning skills. Thus, instruction needs to be concrete and fairly simple, much like kindergarten level. Miss Geist-Page, then, his counsellor, sees John every morning for 45 minutes when he does attend. She's implemented a behaviour programme for John that builds on his existing understanding and focuses heavily on his social skills, real-life skills. She works with him to order pictures, sentences and words, again, all very concrete and not abstract. And, you know, I got to see a good part of this when I attended one of her sessions a few days back. He apparently reads orally quite well. Yes, he certainly seems to, from my experience too, but doesn't comprehend anything. Miss Geist-Page says due to rote learning and drilling memorization. This is something that's quite a norm in China, in schools, rote learning and drilling memorization. She suggests this is how the Chinese language works and is learned. And certainly in most cases, learning Chinese characters and the sounds, they do a lot of repetition. He seems to have not learnt the meanings to any words, so he has no understandings of phonics or the framework of how words are actually made. And Miss Geist-Page actually made a point that from her own experience in America, when she learnt how to read, she really used the system of just, you know, learning the words fully and never was taught phonics. And even now, she says, you know, she can read things and suddenly realize she hasn't understood at all what the sentences mean. So she has to go back over it again and break it down, thus taking a lot more time. So again, there seems to be that very much superficial understanding here, but no real comprehension of the words and their intended meanings. And she says also, you know, under the radar, John might not be the only case here, especially in China. Him and others seemingly not identified here because they can read the words very easily, but they can't or they haven't realized that a lot of these children may, because they haven't learned the actual structure of the words, may actually not be able to comprehend anything they're actually reading, which is a very sad situation indeed. She also suggests from her experience that he may indeed have a type, or for sure she thinks a type of autism known as perhaps a spectrum disorder. I think the big take home here, everybody, is, and from me seeing Eric, he needs more life exposure, more experience, more enrichment of his life, and I really feel that that probably is not coming from the evidence that I've collated and shown to you today from his home life. Sadly, but he does seem to, he needs to go out and maybe cook a pizza with his mum and learn things through actual having direct physical contact and interaction with things like that. So this is something that Mrs. Geisberg is helping him on, but of course most of the time he's not at school, so something needs to happen outside of the classroom. Finally, as I'm sure you're happy I'm alluding to, let's go into the next steps and finish off here with what's going on in this particular case study. Next steps, John was actually, the parents agreed to QSI's recommendation to book him in to have a professional cognitive behavioural assessment. This happened in Hong Kong, just over the water, about an hour by boat, on December the 9th of last year. Sadly, and I really wanted the results to come before this presentation was made, the actual results will be only due in March of 2018, which seems ridiculous. I'm probably thinking that the main assessment will come from a doctor, an expert who's actually not based in Hong Kong, seems to be my feeling on that. So it's got to go back and forward online, and that's why it's taken so long, unfortunately. But it would have been good to, of course, come back with a professional opinion and assessment of John. I think other things need to happen, clearly, is improved communication with the parents, with the implementation of new strategies, drastically improve, for example, his attendance record, and, as I said earlier, enhance his real-life concrete experiences through repetition, which he does seem to be taking on board and working well with, and of course support from everyone involved, not just his teachers. Parents have suggested actually finding him a one-on-one tutor, academic tutor, to travel with him when he practices and plays golf. That would seemingly also be beneficial, I guess. But again, I think we're missing the point here, are we not? He should be really at school for most of the time, and golf should really be his part-time. Another thing that Mrs. Willett mentioned, she'd like to install a digital audio listening centre into her classroom for John to listen to books and instruction on tape. She feels that could also help through auditory learning and keep him more focused and less distracted. And of course, continuing his counselling with Mrs. Geisberg also would I think, clearly help too. Would love to hear your thoughts, feelings, opinions and suggestions on this interesting case study. And yeah, I do hope that more positive outcomes can be seen for John and his life over the coming few years. Thank you for listening to this case study presentation, and I look forward to hearing your feedback.